Right. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of get cracking now. I think I'm gonna leave the chat open and we'll just go from there if that's cool with everyone. Anyway, uh, Nick, what's up? Harry, man, that's cool. All the way from the Netherlands. Amazing. Harrison, what's up, man? This is great. Okay, I'm gonna get going if that's cool. Right, I'm sitting in the weirdest place right now, wearing a pineapple shirt. If you can't see it, but yeah, I just did a presentation to wrap up a low code day. We're hosting in the Shard, so I am not going anywhere near these windows because it's very high up. Anywho, today we get to talk about starting your Copilot Studio journey, and I've been looking forward to this one because this tool has gone through so many iterations. So I'm probably going to say something that's going to get me into trouble in this chat. Don't in this call. Don't tell all my friends, right? And there will be some live stuff happening here. But if you are new to co-piloting and new to learning low code and things like that, this is definitely the call for you. All right. So what's up? My name is Chris. I'm the Director of Innovation here at ANS. And in this photo, I'm not wearing a pineapple shirt. And my friend Martin just ditched me. So Martin, when you're watching this recording, buddy, there is severe judgment going on here. No, I'm kidding. He's actually doing something useful. But normally he would be here talking about data. But he has to be in an AI strategy meeting, which is really cool. So it'll just be me today. I'll do my level best to man the chats and hopefully get the questions out there. I don't think I'll be able to type while I'm talking because when I do, it's a bit weird. But I'll try and answer questions verbally. And I'm going to say this real quick, okay? Yes, you will get the presentation. Yes, you will get the recording. All right. So we got to pin that, right? That's in fact maybe Samantha or Carly. Do you want to just type in the chat? You'll get the presentation, you'll get the recording, and then the first person that asks me for that has to do a shot of espresso or something weird, okay? Because I think at every one of these calls, somebody's asked that at least 6 times. So one more time, yes, you'll get the presentation, yes, you'll get the recording. Okay, cool. You can definitely do tequila, 100%. I am down for that, as long as it's Don Julio. Right. So just a couple of things, right? I'm not going to go through this again. You can watch the previous recordings or read the previous decks, but we will be talking about Copilot in general for a little bit, and I will do a little bit of a summary, and then we'll move into Copilot Studio. Um, yeah, Michelle's right. Shots with me does end in a long night, as you should know. I'm not exactly closed about that. So Microsoft have released two primary kind of copilots within their stack. Now, I totally get it. The skew is a bit weird when people are like, hey, there's a copilot. Do you mean Microsoft 365 Copilot? Do you mean Copilot for Bing? Do you mean GitHub Copilot? Like, what does that actually mean? Okay. And here's the thing. The concept of the Copilot existing on its own is doable, right? And that is the Microsoft 365 Copilot. It is actually called Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365, brought to you by the same people that named something Teams. I'm not responsible for that. So just bear in mind, this is a Microsoft naming convention, not mine. But then you have all these in-product copilots, which are pretty good. So what you can do is you can kind of use a tool like Power Platform or Microsoft Power Automate or GitHub, and you have copilots embedded in those tools to help you do things, okay? But Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is their kind of flagship product, lives outside of that. So it can kind of do its own thing, right? So that's pretty important. And the next thing that is equally important is that when looking at Microsoft 365 Copilot, it leverages a tool called the Microsoft Graph, which is effectively contextual information about things that you are doing. Okay. Now, when we get to Copilot Studio will not do this, right? This is very important and unique to Microsoft 365 Copilot. So effectively, when you're using one of the apps or things within Microsoft 365 that they've bolted Copilot onto, what it'll do is it will interrogate the graph. So it looks at information that's contextual to you. So I'll use my good friend Nick Fun and he was on the call. If Nick says, hey, go and explore all of Chris's email, it won't be able to do that, right? Because it's not in the context of Nick's graph. And then it'll interrogate the large language model, which is extremely important. And that LLM lives inside Azure. Okay, so it doesn't go outside of your tenants. It looks inside Azure. So you need to remember that this tool is really useful for driving that interrogation of the Microsoft Graph, that large language model, and then supercharging the engagements you have with applications inside the Microsoft 365 stack. All right. Now, please understand everything I say from here. You need to know that it is caveated with the fact that there is security behind it. So if you should be using tools like Purview to manage and maintain your unstructured data. Okay, very important. So that's what we went through a couple of calls ago. The other thing to remember, those of you who are Top Gun fans, if you have ever watched the movie Top Gun and you're old school like me, Copilot is not Maverick. Copilot is Goose. And it does not die, right? So if you've seen the movies, cool. If you haven't seen the movies, you have no idea what I'm talking about. You need to watch Top Gun. It's a cult classic. Like, go and sort your life out. It's very important. You can make a lot of really good co-pilot jokes and references when you watch the movie Top Gun. But remember, it is a co-pilot, not an autopilot. It's not meant to fly the plane for you. It's meant to assist you in the things you're building. Okay, so that's a very brief summary of what we covered last time. I'm going to get into Copilot Studio. Okay, now what Microsoft talk about where of these three pillars of getting started with Copilot in general, okay? And it's adopt, extend, build. So adopt is what we spoke about last time. Extending is what we're going to speak about in the next session, and building is what we're going to be talking about in this session, okay? But these are their core three pillars. So in adopt, what you would typically do is apply a Copilot adoption model. This is for Microsoft 365 Copilot, where you'll have the ability to implement your guardrails using tools, again, like Microsoft Purview. If you're not using Purview, you need to use it. Okay, I'll write that in the chat shortly. And again, it is in the other recordings and is in the other decks, and I promise if you request them, you will get them. I'm sorry, Chris, we'll get to that as well, buddy. But it's super important to know that these tools help you manage the data within Copilot. Now, what's real interesting is if you're not using Microsoft 365 Copilot, you've got something to think about. Now, here's a couple of stats. Now, I know they say that 75% of stats are made up on the spot, but this is not the case. This is based on the Work Trend Index. And what's pretty amazing, actually, is when I think they interviewed like 31,000 people, somewhere around there. Oh, there it is. And they were talking about like, what would AI help you with? So 86% of people said AI would assist them in finding the right information and answers they needed. Okay, so that's generating knowledge, right? Like that's getting information. Now, what's crazy is that in the Microsoft 365 Copilot, you can do that extremely quickly. Okay, so as an example, if you're going to go and get knowledge really, really easily in Microsoft 365 Copilot, you could simply pop open your Copilot over there, and you can say, find me all things that are pertaining to that. So we can say, find all the documents that information about finances. Okay, so this is the Microsoft 365 Copilot again. It's around yeah. Chris says you need to get MS Purview. Yes, Chris says you do need to get MS Purview. Abso-freaking-lutely, right? 100% Purview is your friend. So what it'll do is it'll give me all the information around the documents relating to finance, which is pretty exciting. Hopefully this doesn't bring up my expense budget. Thanks, Damon. You're a ledge, buddy. I'm glad you're on the call, man. You're going to have to help me do a chat moderation. Anywho, so that's pretty good, right? That's how you find information. Now, this is, again, Microsoft 365 Copilot. The second thing is, are you comfortable with using AI as a tool to drive action, right? So can you actually use AI as a tool to do your administrative tasks? My God, if I could get AI to do my expenses, I would be the happiest dude in the world. Because let me tell you, like, I hate life admin, and expenses is one of those things that I hate doing. I just wish I could just spend all the money and, never have to worry, but I have to get it back, right? So 76% of people say that actually AI will help them do these administrative tasks. Okay, cool. Well, we've got action now, so we've got knowledge and action. The third thing is autonomy. 70% of people would delegate as much work as they're possible to AI to lessen their workloads. This guy, right? 100%. In fact, I'm actually really lazy. Like, I don't want to do all the manual work. The one thing I absolutely cannot stand is my mundane tasks. Like, I call it robotic tasks, and I always talk about taking the robot out of the human. I absolutely hate work, and I cannot explain to you, right? Like, one of my favorite things when Power Automate came out, and this is a low-code tool, is that I could automate a lot of things, which is great, but actually, it wasn't always the right use case for automation, and I needed AI, and vice versa, by the way. Things that are deterministic, so you can define an outcome, like 2 + 2 is 4, that's automation. Two things that are non-deterministic, like 2 + 2 might equal 22, that is effectively generative, right? So that is non-deterministic. And what's pretty good is that both work hand in hand. And I'll talk about that later with a thing called agentification. So you can see that the stats are there. Actually, people are really excited about using artificial intelligence to drive that autonomy. Now, in the past, we talk about these things called bots. And I know some people on this call for a fact would be using the artist formerly known as Power Virtual Agents. If you don't know what that is yet, don't worry, I'll get there, right? Then we use bots, and bots effectively are a defined pathway for interacting with data. So what you would do is you would build a pathway, and then you would say, okay, we're going to use natural language to talk to our data, and we're going to use natural language to drive that data interaction, which is pretty cool, right? I mean, I love that idea because actually it does make a bit of a difference to using a badly designed Canvas app that I would build. Anywho, yeah, all my Canvas apps are blue and white, by the way, for those of you that know what a Canvas app is. So what you would do is you'd build a bot, then you would kind of grab information from data structures like Dataverse or SQL, and if you're really brave, SharePoint, and you would push that data up into that bot, and you would route people down a pathway. So you've all been onto those websites where you click on a thing and it says, hey, I'm Bob the bot, and I would love to help you. And then you type in about 6 things and it has no clue what's going on. Okay, that is a bot, right? The difference between that and a copilot actually is a copilot is like a bot on steroids. And what it does is it's grounded in your data. So it actually knows your information. It's grounded in your data. But what it also does is it supercharges that data with generative AI, right? So it looks at a large language model and it supercharges that data. What it can also do is it can be contextualized and personalized. Now, I want to hold up real quick, right? Because when I say contextualized and personalized, at the moment, you still need to be able to bring data in and store it in a place in order for the bots to know where you are, to know who you are. But when I'll get to hallucinations, by the way. But when that bot ends, okay, when that interaction ends, the bot doesn't know who you are. It's got no cooking idea, right? Hallucinations are really important, and this is key. That's going to come down to the data that you put into the Copilot. So, as an example, if you have a data repository full of documentation, and I'll actually demo this to you. If you have a data repository full of documentation, but you haven't bothered to reread the documents or review the documents, that information is going to be bad data, right? And it's going to be served up through the bots, even worse through from an hallucination perspective. So what's really important is grounding your data first, making sure it's extremely accurate, and then servicing that up through the actual Copilot interface. It's a great question, by the way, Philip. The one thing we say to people all the time is grounding your data and making sure it's correct is extremely important. I'm going to give you an example. We all know what misinformation on the internet is, right? So what will happen is if some clever Joe writes a stupid website about something that's like anti-political, Copilot doesn't know whether that's good or bad data. It has no idea. It's like an intern who's still absorbing knowledge. So what it'll do is it'll reference that data. It's like that legal thing that happened in the States where they asked Copilot to reference a bunch of use cases or cases, and it did based on bad data, and it served them up, but those cases didn't exist, right? So it hallucinated, it generated those itself, and that's based on bad data. So setting your data correctly and grounding it correctly is extremely important. And that's why I actually like custom copilots. So Microsoft released this tool called Copilot Studio. Now, everyone was like, okay, cool. I promise this is Coca-Cola, by the way. And everyone was like, okay, cool, this Copilot Studio thing sounds pretty awesome. What is it? So effectively, it's a conversational AI-driven user experience that allows you to build your own copilots. Okay, sounds pretty good, right? So copilots are effectively supercharged bots and they're grounded in data. That sounds absolutely wonderful. But why did this thing just appear randomly? Okay, well, I'm going to take you on a bit of a history lesson. Power Platform nerds on this call, like Damien Bell, will recognize this slide over here. And this slide has been around for many moons. And you will notice things like Power BI and Power Apps, Power Automate. A lot of you know those. And then obviously Dataverse, the thing that looks like a cabbage that I have tattooed on my leg. and this is a stack of tools that has been around for a fairly long time. Okay. So you see Copilot Studio in there. And previously you would have seen a thing called Power Virtual Agents. Well, I called it Power Bots. I thought that sounded way cooler, but apparently that was taken by Michael Bay. So no Power Bots, Power Virtual Agents. But actually, where did this come from? So let's just take a look at the Microsoft Cloud Stack. Ooh, I left out an animation. Look at that. So the history of the Power Platform, you can see that tools like Power BI or Yellow Excel, as I like to call it. Some of my friends on the call will fling something at me for calling it that. Power Apps and Power FX came from Microsoft Office, so it is not new. Yes, I did just call it Yellow Excel. I know I'm not sorry. The next is when you look at things like Dataverse, the thing that looks like the cabbage or the green tornado. Power Pages and Power Apps came from Microsoft Dynamics 365. And when you look at the tools from Microsoft Azure, you can see that Copilot Studio came from Azure. Now, what Microsoft do is they are not actually very good at creating brand spanking new things. That will not lose me my MVP, hopefully. But what they are very good at doing is reusing tech that they've already built and grounded from the very beginning. So things like, I don't know, let's pick Dataverse came from Dynamics. They just pried it out of the cold, dry hands of the Dynamics team. And Power Automate, or I call it Logic Apps for Simpletons, was generated during a hackathon. Okay, so where did Copilot Studio just randomly appear from? Well, actually, it came from the bot framework. And the bot framework is an Azure-driven tool that's been around for a while, but actually gives us the ability to use conversational user experiences on top of data and drive people through this process of using a bot. So they did that. Along came OpenAI, and OpenAI were like, hey, we have got this cool thing called GPT, Generative Pre-trained Transformers. And Microsoft were like, oh, sweet, that sounds pretty good. So what we'll do is we'll start infusing our products with GPT. Now, you've been using GPT for a while, right? Like you used GPT version 1 in PowerPoint. You probably didn't even know it. That's where the ideas came from. And also in Power Apps, by the way. So what made this really cool? Well, what was really amazing is that actually Microsoft reframed a whole product and they called Copilot Studio. They took Power Virtual Agents and reframed it to Copilot Studio, which is pretty cool. So all those things that you think are bots are effectively have the ability to be supercharged as copilots, right? As long as there's the generative pre-trained transformer function in there. Now, the one thing I just want to mention is Damien said something really good in the chat, right? When you do get hallucinations, because you will, it's not always going to be perfect. It's always important to feed back on those hallucinations because nobody really knows whether the data is correct or incorrect. I will bring up a thing called red teaming. So what red teamers do is they review the response from the AI to say whether it's good or bad. And actually, there are a bunch of Uber drivers in the States that have taken up a role as a red teamer to review AI responses. I will show you something very quickly. Before I get on, just on hallucinations, if you go to OpenAI Red Teamer Network, this is pretty wild. OpenAI Red Teaming Network. All of these here, this is the OpenAI Red Teaming Network, you can actually apply, and they're looking for these types of people to review the responses of artificial intelligence. I feel like we're rewriting the internet, by the way. It's pretty cool. So as an example, chemistry, right? So if you don't know what covalent bonding is, and you ask AI what covalent bonding is, and it gives you a terrible answer, you need a red teamer to review it. So somebody that knows chemistry. So it's important to give that feedback. Anyway, that's me doing my ADHD thing. I'll get back to the presentation. So Copilot Studio, right? What can you do? Well, first of all, you can build your own custom copilots, which is very kick-ass. You can design, enhance, and manage these copilots really easily. And what I love about it is actually, I find that being able to build these things out is really replacing the need for me to build a Canvas app or a model-driven app on top of my data every time. Okay. So when we look at this process, right now, we are looking at what you call build. Next week or 2 weeks' time, I don't know when it is, but I think I'm in New York at that time, we're going to be looking at extend. So it's weird. We're doing build first, but actually the right way is adopt, build, extend, because it's way easier to build a custom Copilot from scratch than to extend Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is my opinion, by the way. Anywho, so how does this work? Right. So what you do is you use Copilot to create your own custom Copilot. So you can literally get started in minutes, and I'm going to give that a go today, okay? What you can do is you can connect to your own knowledge base, which I'll do today as well, by the way. I'll connect to a SharePoint site and I'll show you some stuff. You can integrate data from various locations. So what's cool is that those of you that do Power Platform will understand the concept of connectors. Well, guess what? You'll just become a whole lot more valuable. In fact, if you're a Power Platform person, you should ask for a raise right now because you have the ability to build custom copilots that are grounded in your data and actually share those with a wider audience. That's pretty amazing, right? So those of you that are low-code people and understand how connectors work, go and get a salary increase. You can put in rule-based topics, so you can actually help people drive down certain routes. And that's more of a bot functionality. You can customize with conversational services, so you can integrate into other tools like Azure AI Studio, which is actually very cool. It's more of a, I would say, technical tool to use than Copilot Studio. Like if you're going to start, you want to learn Copilot Studio first, then go take a look at Azure AI Studio, which I might do in the next 2 weeks. For our call, I don't know yet, but we'll see. Um, Once you've done that, you can publish your Copilot, so you can share that Copilot out to various channels across your business. So you can embed it in Teams, you can pop it on an internal websites, and then also you can it can kind of like learn and review. So you can go and take a look at the monitoring and the analytics and try and figure out what's going on, and then review and rebuild that Copilot as you go. It's very cool, right? So I've started to find that the ability to design these custom Copilots has really served me quite well. Now, here's the good thing again. Low code people, you can build with low code. You do not need to write code for this. Obviously, if you're a dev and you want to write code, that's fine. I'm actually an ex-developer, but I'm better now. I used to work for Borland. But yeah, I just use low code, and then I bother people like, Nick and them when I need something built. What's also pretty good is you can actually plug in your own GPTs, you can build out your own prompts, and you can service your business data where you need to. So great question, Jasleen. Does this only work with MS-compatible data warehouse databases? No, the primary out-the-box connectors work directly with those, but you can connect it to pretty much anything you want, right? As long as there's a connector, you can do that. You can boost up your conversations, so you can go ahead and use that generative AI to actually will run the way the conversation should move. It also handles pretty complex queries, which is quite good. So I'll show you in the demo. I'm going to pop a bit of more of a complex query into the data structure, into the Copilot, and you'll see what it does. It's pretty amazing. The other thing that's great is you can integrate your Copilots with your low-code platform. So embed these in things like Canvas apps, model-driven apps. You can surface them pretty much wherever you'd like. And actually embedding your Copilot in a Canvas app is a great way of surfacing it directly onto a SharePoint site, which I like. And the great way is automation through conversation, right? So using Power Automate to trigger automations in the background. Now, that piece there is important, and it's actually an important piece around what we call agentification, which I will talk to you later on. If you take anything from this conversation, you want to start thinking about using agents, all right? I will explain, I promise, but if you learn Copilot Studio, you're in an extremely good position to learn about agents. Okay, that is the future. Right, so, let me get Teams back, sorry. For some reason, there we go. I need to be able to see the comments. Right, so what's great is when you want to go and build your Copilot, you can use the describe approach. So instead of you having to create the Copilot using the graphical approach, which is second on the list, you can actually go ahead and use natural language. So you can say, hey, I would like a Copilot that helps me manage my ordering of food in this specific way. And actually, the Copilot will allow you to do that. It'll build itself out for you with the topics and things already pre-created in the background. You can use the low-code approach. So if you want to use low-code, if you want to design the routing and that type of thing, you can do that, and that's more graphical. Okay. And then you've got your declarative code use, where you can use YAML and actually define that through custom code. Again, not my super strong point, but something for the pro coders out there to think about. So when you start going through the process, what really makes the AI shine in Copilot Studio and what makes Copilot Studio special is the fact that you've got these amazing mechanisms to drive generative answers, okay? And you can kind of say, right, what is the content in my organization? And the GPT will actually do these multi-turn answers based on the content that you feed it. And I actually will show you it, right? You've got actions, and the actions can actually take you through what we call chaining. So you can do like dynamic chaining between content and topics. And then finally, if you really want to, if you are super nerdy and you want to get involved, I don't know if we've got any Azure AI, OpenAI Studio people on the call, but you can use Azure OpenAI to do some pretty cool stuff around, generating that OpenAI bots and then kind of bringing it into Copilot Studio. It's a lot more pro-codey, as I said before. I don't know if I'm going to show it to you in 2 weeks. It just depends on how well my Azure is behaving. But yeah, it's definitely a good way if you want to drive that pro-code approach. Okay. Important is that you can integrate Copilot with pretty much anything else. So we see Copilot being introduced into pretty much everything, right? If you are a Dynamics person, you'll start seeing Copilot appearing in your model-driven applications just as a standard of interacting with data. It's the same with using tools like Canvas apps. Okay. The other thing that we're starting to find is that, we had a question from Jasleen around, does this only work with MS-compatible data warehouses? So what we've actually found is that organizations are plugging Copilot into SAP, which is pretty wild, right? So you can use SAP as a data structure and actually talk to SAP through the Copilot. The amazing part that I think is really, really going to accelerate the way in which we think about technology is when you look at your frontline workforce, we are so used to using applications. So what you would do is you'd make an app, you would surface it up on your mobile phone. So you'd be like, cool, I'm going to have an app that is built for booking a flight. Okay, so like let's pick a flight booking organization like Expedia. And what you would do is you would go into the app and you'll be like, click, 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 click. I'm going to go ahead and book my flight through this. But actually, I think it's changing the way our frontline workforce will be thinking about the way in which we interact with data, right? And that is, I think the app experience is changing a whole lot. And I think that is going to move to conversational UX. And even when you look at them, when you look at what they're doing in things like Project Sophia, which I will show you very quickly. So take a look at this if you get the chance. When you actually look at the, Dwayne, yes, you will get a recording and you'll get the slides. Dwayne has to do a shot of espresso. Anyway, if I go to the Project Sophia website, I think it is this one here. See if it'll let me on. Nope. Why has it decided to not let me on? Nope. Sorry, guys. 1 second. Oh, my browser tab is there. We go. Cool. So if you get a chance, you should give this a go. I'm going to copy the link into the chat. Okay. If you say try now, you'll actually start seeing that the Copilot experience is being inbuilt naturally into business applications. Okay. So here's Project Sophia. So check this out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just upload a sales data structure inside my, believe it or not, this is a business application. It's more like an experience canvas. But what will actually happen is I can go ahead. Let's just see, is running, generate. Come on, wake up. I can go ahead and actually generate data. And what it'll do is my experience, instead of using an app, is conversational, right? So here it is. It'll take a couple of seconds to load, but this is a combination of things like Microsoft Fabric bolted in with custom copilots to interrogate data. So instead of us having to physically press buttons, we're taking on this pathway where we're weaving and interacting with data in an extremely different way. I highly recommend you check this out, right? Because I believe that the way business applications will work in the future is going to be a combination of data like through Fabric / Power BI and conversational user experiences and agentification. Okay. So while that loads, there we go. Very, very straightforward. You can see that I've got there we go. I've got my little screen over there. So I can go ahead. I can say that I'm in sales and marketing. I can click on here and it'll bring up a little prompt screen, and I can say, show me the sales for the last 3 months. Generate blueprint. And what it'll actually do is it'll drill into that data through the conversational natural language UX and actually interrogate it. There we go. So you see it's shifted down a notch, and this is your new experience, I believe, from an application perspective. I don't think it's always going to be button, button, click, click. Okay. I'm going to move on because I am running out of time. You can publish where you want as well. So we see a lot of organizations firing these copilots into Microsoft Teams, which is obviously the new desktop experience, right? It's where a lot of people are using your conversational user experience. And a lot of people are actually saying, you know what? We're going to live in Teams, right? And we can thank COVID for that. But yeah, it's a really great way to start interacting with data. Cool. So one other thing, sorry, I do apologize, is that when we start thinking about the Copilot, if you need a human in the loop, you can actually escalate to a live agent. So any of you that are Dynamics fans will know that in Omnichannel Engagement Hub, you can handle to an agent. This is the exact same process. So what you want to do is when things start getting a little bit hairy or the data isn't clear, you want to make sure that there is a human in the loop. Again, this is a Copilot. It is not an autopilot. Okay. So when you think about this concept of passing off to a live agent, you might get somebody running through this generative pre-trained transformer interaction through the Copilot, having a chat with it. Thanks, Phil. Having a chat with it. And it's quite interesting because what will happen is that as you're going through this process, it might become too much. You will then fire that off to an agent, and that person can pick it up and actually manage it from a digital contact center perspective. So a lot of this is done in my Dynamics 365 out the box. But if you wanted to integrate to things like ServiceNow or Salesforce or whatever other tool you're using, it's totally doable and absolutely possible. Okay. So a couple of examples, right, of bringing a Copilot to life. There are lots. Now, mainly we're seeing it used in things like IT services. I have found a lot of people saying that it's going to replace first line support, right? Which is interesting because as somebody goes through the process of, you know, doing troubleshooting, it may actually be the case. Customer facing. Now, I want to caveat this. I'm extremely skeptical of putting a generative pre-trained transformer in front of a customer, right? And the reason is because of hallucinations. And as so rightly pointed out in the very beginning, you know, somebody asked, it was one of the car websites in the States that I can I buy a car for $1, and the GPT in the Copilot said, yes, you can. Now, here's the thing. Who is responsible for that? Is that the person that put the Copilot on the website? Is that the company? And they had to sell a car for $1 because that effectively was legally binding through the bots. Okay. A lot of the time we see it built through human resources as well. So internally, that's a great use case, right? Like a great scenario is saying, hey, you know, we've got a bunch of information on our HR portal. We want to be able to surface this up to the right people. How do we get this content in front of them without them digging around an internal SharePoint site? And actually, it's a great way of human resources is a really interesting way of doing it. Now, what I wanted to do is I wanted to do another little demo. Here's the dig in. And we do work with the facial palsy sites in the UK. And that is when I learned to spell correctly. It's a very, very tough disease to have, and unfortunately, it does give you facial paralysis. Right? It's not wonderful. We have a lovely lady that's part of our team called Janet Robb, who has introduced us to these people, and actually, this Copilot has really helped them. Now, this is a live website. Okay, I'll put it in the chat. You're more than welcome to try this out. Oopsie. Let's just do that again. I will grab the URL, stick it in the chat. Yeah, I'll totally buy that for a Dominic. Dominic, good to see you, buddy. So what can happen a lot of the time is when people are perusing this website, it can be a little bit tough for them to find the right information. Also, they don't really have a search function. So it's not easy for them to get to data. So what we did is we generated a Copilot. And I think the smart thing that we did was the Copilot, when I load it eventually, has got some preset prompts. So, hey, I'm the Facial Palsy UK virtual agent, blah, 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 blah. And it actually shows you the prompts that you can use. So I can say what treatment is available. So it's got pre-built prompting, and it'll actually tell me the NHS must accept it's blah, blah, blah. And it'll actually give you pages that I can go to extremely quickly. Now, this Copilot did not take us a very long time to build. In fact, it took us hours. All right. But the immediate impact on a customer-facing organization is huge. But we always remember that the Copilot is generated by AI, right? So there is a clause and there is a caveat. Then whenever you are using Copilots, it is generated by AI. It is really important for you to know that. It is a generative pre-trained transformer. So I can say, tell me more. And actually, I'm just prompting the information on the website. Now, here's the thing. If the data on the website is bad, we have a problem, okay? Now, this isn't necessarily bad. It's just I've done a terrible prompt. But what I'm hoping you understand is that putting this customer facing, it's not necessarily risky, but people need to know that it is AI generated content. Okay. So that is a live customer bot I wanted to show you. Right. So next few things. What about building Copilots that work for you? So there are a lot of things you can do, right? There are a lot of scenarios that you could create Copilots for. Now, the interesting part is that when you are using Microsoft 365 Copilot, it doesn't always cater for those specific scenarios. Now, we know that Microsoft 365 Copilot is wonderful. It interrogates the graph, blah, 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 blah. It's really cool, okay? But actually, it's not always scenario specific. And it may not be, right? Because actually, it's meant for a wider use. So when thinking about generating Copilots with Copilot Studio, it's important to think about the scenario that you're doing it for. And actually, what's great is that you could focus on it by industry. So there actually are some really cool industry templates in Copilot Studio that you can use. And you can actually generate things as a start, test it out, then, carry on going from there. Or you could do it by department. Now, Microsoft actually started out with their first actual M365 Copilot drop inside finance. Who would have thought, right? People that love numbers, making Copilots and using Copilot, well, yeah, that's great because they actually got some really, really good wins from it. Places we see it getting picked up the most are IT and HR. So if we don't think about your industry, IT and HR are huge, huge, huge. One of the other ones that I found interesting is on the left here. Whoopsie, sorry. One of the things I found interesting is on the left-hand side, they did not include legal, and maybe it's under ProServe, I guess, I don't know, but actually legal were top of the list for adopting custom copilots, and because their use cases or scenarios are extremely complicated. And if you think about the scenario of maybe a legal person having to look at like some Latin legal structure and then generating a document off the back of that, Microsoft 365 Copilot in Microsoft Word doesn't necessarily cater for that. You need something a little bit more robust. And that's where Copilot Studio can help you. Okay. So it's always important to think about the thing that you're building the Copilot for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in and I'm going to show you some things. Now, this is going to get a little bit nerdy. I hope you don't mind. I do like to get a little bit nerdy. Remember, I'm not going into extending Copilot today. We're going to go into some basic builds. And actually, I was hoping that potentially somebody in the audience would allow me to use their website for my Copilot build, if that's okay. So if you'd like me to use your website and you're happy to share it with people, stick it in the chats and I will build you a custom Copilot right now. Okay. Now, just a real quick one. When you go through the utilization of Copilot, you would have used Power Virtual Agents potentially. Thank you, Damien. You would have used Power Virtual Agents potentially. That user experience has changed, okay? So that UX has changed. Now, what I mean is you have this thing called the new unified user interface. The unified user interface does give you more access to getting access to things like actions, topics, making use of the personas and the different turns within the Copilot itself. But it's important to remember that, the UX is really different from what it previously was. And I'll give you a little bit of a demo of what it was and what it is. Right, so please note that the new unified UX is a much easier way to start interacting with Copilot. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in, right? Let's get a bit nerdy. And I'm going to pop open my screen over there. And what we will do is we're going to go to make.powerapps.com. And you're probably used to going this route, right? So make.powerapps.com. And in there, you've got more. When you click in there, you go to your little chatbot icon. And what you can do directly in here is you can make a new bot. Okay. So what we're going to do is we'll make a couple of bots. Okay, cool. Yeah, Damien, I'll go with Jules's. Can it work with semantic data? Yep, absolutely. I can't see why not. And we're going to call this. I hope Jules, you don't mind. I'm going to open up your Diabetes UK site. So let's use that one. All right. And I'm going to build on the old interface, then I'll show you the new interface. Okay. So we'll call this the Copilot for Cool. All right. And what we'll do is we'll simply keep it in English. You can have multiple languages, and I'll show you where to do that. Or you can stick in your website, and we will say create. Cool. So super straightforward. Now, remember, I'm using the old UX, and I want you to see the difference, right? Because the old user interface, in my opinion, is slightly, I don't know, how do we say it? Archaic. The new one is way cooler. And let's have a look at the diabetes site real quick. So I'm gonna go ahead and check this out. So let's say, we can maybe say, tell me about the basics of type 1 diabetes. That's a really good one, right? So tell me about the basics of type 1 diabetes. Okay. So what we will do is we'll go back, and you can see it's created my little micro Copilot over here. So you can see I've got my overview, my interaction there, and I can test my Copilot. So I will say, tell me about. Hopefully it's all happy and trained up. It might not be. It might take a few seconds, but let's have a look. And there we go. So it's given me a good bunch of information about type 1 diabetes. Oh, wow. Okay. Crazy. I didn't know that. I probably should learn about this. And actually what I can do is I can say what causes type 1 diabetes, accept cookies, and it'll give me a whole bunch of information. So it's gone and looked at the diabetes website and actually said, you know what, Chris, you can build a Copilot really quickly on top of this. So thank you, Julia. I appreciate that. Sorry, I called you Jules. Thank you very much. Yeah, you can go ahead and use that. You can go ahead and embed that bot, right? Now, what's really awesome is if I wanted to, I can drill in and you can actually see the topics that's routed me down. So this is what you call branching logic, okay? So it's actually looking at the diabetes website and gone ahead and build these for me, okay? Really very cool. If I wanted to, I can say, right, let's make sure that this is all happy. Copilot for diabetes. Yep, really, really cool. Okay. You can have different languages. So if I want to, I can go ahead and put other languages in there. We trialed this, by the way. It works super duper well. Obviously, it doesn't support everything yet, but hopefully soon. Security, this is important. Okay, so if you take anything from me right now, this is important. As you start doing this, okay, if I go into sharing, sorry, not sharing, if I click on authentication, it thinks I need to authenticate with Microsoft right now. So if you are embedding in Microsoft Teams or a Canvas app, can we integrate the website as it is? Yeah, you can integrate the website as a data source if it's hosted on the internet. In fact, I'll build that for you. But if I want to make this publicly available, I need to select no authentication, okay? This requires a sign-in. Now, the reason for this is because if you use your SharePoint intranet as a website, you will not be allowed to publish this publicly. Why? Because it is a bad idea to share private information outside of your business. So we're going to go no authentication, save it up over there, let's give it a save, take a couple of minutes, and actually I'll share the URL that you can go and use to test this. But remember, I've set the security to external, right? I'm not doing it internal, okay? So if I go to my details again, let's have a look. Cool. Right, I'm not going to publish it right now. I'll publish it when something else is happening. But what's pretty amazing is now I have a running Copilot immediately. There it is. So publish. There we go. Hopefully it'll take a few seconds. And I can go ahead and grab the URL and chuck it into the chat. So that's the first way of creating a very, very simple, quick win custom Copilot for your external data. Remember, external data. You can publish this internally if you really want to. And if I go back to overview over there, hopefully it'll give you the URL. Nope. I'll figure out. There we go. Demo website. Let's pop that open. And I'll chuck the demo website in the chat for you to test it out. So there we go. Congratulations, Julie. You have a custom Copilot for the diabetes site ready and willing and available. You can embed it, by the way, as well, like we did the facial palsy one. Okay. So, folks, that is the first way of doing it, is using a. Thank you. I can sense the thrilledness. So that's pretty good, right? That's creating my first custom Copilot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get out of this this Microsoft one, and we're going to go ahead and close the demo website because I love tabs. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and go into the new user experience, and that is copilot.microsoft.com. And I will tell you, it looks a whole Copilot Studio.microsoft.com. It looks a whole lot prettier. So if I go in there, right? This is hilarious. There's a random couple fighting next to me. I'm sorry if you hear the noise. This is the kind of new UX, right? So if I go to home, you've got a whole bunch of functions here and a whole bunch of new things that you can do, which I absolutely love. So I can say start with the templates. Okay, remember I told you that you've got these pre-built templates. If I'm going to go ahead and build a travel bot or store operations, I can go ahead and just click on that, save travels, blah, 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 hit create, and it'll actually generate the Copilot for me. Okay. Now, what's cool is that it kind of thinks it knows what you want, a bit like my ex-girlfriend thought I knew what I wanted. So it'll kind of go through the process of building a very basic Copilot that you can then edit. So you know how we have app templates for Power Platform? We've got the same sort of thing here. So if I say, I want to travel to the outer eastern rings of Saturn, see what it does. I could have said Mongolia and made this a whole lot easier. Of Saturn, there we go, kapow. Let's see if TravelBot likes me. Don't know. I don't know if it'll want to send me to Saturn. Right. Come on, TravelBot, send me to Saturn. Let's do it. It's taking long. It's trying to figure its life out. Nope. Retry. It didn't like me. Oh, there we go. Hello, how can I help you today? I want to go to Saturn. Please. I'm very well mannered to AI, so when it comes to life, it doesn't kill me first. Right. Come on, send me to Saturn. Okay, while it's doing its thing, I'll walk you through what you got here. So basically, you've got the ability to kind of drill into your various knowledge articles. So we had a question in the chat that can you attach your knowledge articles? You can. Okay. Oh, this was the US public website. So that's the first thing that it's gone to as part of its knowledge base. So in your custom GPT, this is the data structures that you're looking at. You can create your branching topics directly from here. So these are the ones that come out the box. We will explore those next time. You've got the ability to generate your actions and feed actions into this. So actions are effectively like mechanisms to reach out to external data. Effectively, it's a bit like Power Automate. And then you've got your channels that you're going to publish your bots on, obviously analytics as well. Now, here's the great thing, right? Most people publish directly through Teams, but you've got a bunch of other channels that you can use as well if you so choose to turn them on. Okay. So that's using the standard the standard Copilot, right? The templates. The one I wanted to show you, which I think was pretty cool, is this. So imagine you have an internal HR site. Right now, I study planetary sciences through the University of Birkbeck, so I like astrobiology. It's one of my favorite subjects. And actually, I wrote my exams last year, and I did pretty well on this. I was actually quite happy. But I actually created a micro data structure and a mini GPT for me to ask it questions. And as you can see, there's a lot of lectures in here. So I've got a whole bunch of knowledge sources, right, which could be internal HR sources. And if I take a look at these, oh, I love that. Thanks, Michelle. That's pretty cool. So if I take a look here, and I go ahead and picture lecture 11, right? Because I know the subject I want to ask it is lecture 11. I've got tons of information, right? Tons and tons and tons. But my favorite thing is a thing called the Arecibo message. And the Arecibo message was effectively a message sent out in around 1974 that tried to explain to, aliens that this is what we're all about. So there's a little dude there, there's a little house, or not a dude, maybe a dudette, I don't know. Anyway, so it basically tells a story of who we are. Now, we got asked a question on this and a thing called the Fermi paradox. So I was extremely lazy, and I'm like, man, I don't want to have to review a whole bunch of lecture material. So what I did is I built my astrobiology site and I inserted a very, very micro custom Copilot, which has gotten very small. In my custom Copilot, I can say, tell me more about the Fermi paradox. So instead of me having to browse a whole bunch of lecture material or try and search for stuff, I'm going to ask it a logical question and hopefully it'll give me a logical answer, depending on if it's decided to behave today or not. It can be a little bit petulant like one of my kids. Or me after 5 beers. Right. So I want to know more about the Fermi paradox. Let's have a look. Here we go. So the Fermi paradox is apparent contradiction. Basically, in a nutshell, it says that if aliens exist, why haven't they visited us? That's in a nutshell. But then I've got all the evidence in my material over here, okay, which is pretty wild, right? So you can actually see I've got a bunch of information that's taken me directly to the Arecibo message and talks about the Fermi paradox. Yeah, backtrack. Think about this from an HR perspective. If you have a bunch of people searching your HR site, asking us, when do we take leave? How do we apply for this? When do I do that? Your scenario is actually pretty special. And can I show you how easy it is to create one of these copilots? It's as simple as going to create a copilot. Okay. We're going to start with a new copilot over there. We're going to call it the Astrobot. I'm going to go ahead and say, we're going to say this. Just ignore me. I'm putting in random info. I can't spell either. Cool. I'm going to add knowledge. And I can either pick public websites or SharePoint sites. So we'll pick SharePoint. Hopefully this will work. There it is there. Nice. Add. Sweet. Create Copilot. Done deal. That's how easy it is. Okay. So it's pretty wicked is that I can go ahead and build these custom Copilots on top of my data. And hopefully it'll be happy. It's just connecting up to the SharePoint site. So I can say, tell me about the Fermi paradox. And hopefully this will be happy. Might not, let's just see. Also, I can't spell the word about, apparently. This is my terrible typing. So that's another great way to start generating custom copilots. So what you've done is you've seen 3 ways to do this. There is a third way. The third way is very cool. And I will show you the third way as a very last point of call, right? Because this thing is taking its time. I'm going to go and say, create a new custom copilot again. We'll say a new copilot. And we will describe my copilot. And I will say, create. And what is pretty wicked is when I describe my copilot, it'll actually go ahead and look at that description. Hopefully this is the right one. I just want to say, nope, I've done it incorrectly. Apologies, folks. I'll just use this one. It was a pre-create, right? So you can go ahead and describe the copilot. And actually what it'll do is it uses the AI that you've connected in there. So the prompts I've used I'm just doing this because of time, is this prompt over here. Create me a Copilot that will allow me to manage food orders from my customers, ensure that the common fast foods are associated. Drinks are listed in the option. I'm going to copy this prompt into the chat so you can try it yourself. And ultimately what will happen is I can say, I want to order some food. Okay, so costs are effectively down to your interactions with the Copilot. Okay, so SharePoint, you're fine. You will not be able to do this on E5, right? It's not down to the actual E5 license. It's down to the interactions and the number of interactions you've got. Damien, if you wouldn't mind, sorry, buddy, on the PVA website, on the Copilot Studio website, would you mind chucking the link in the chat just for the folks to see sort of how much the interactions cost? Let me know what kind of food you'd like to order. Burgers, please. Okay. And actually what will happen is as I'm going through this process, right, it'll start asking me more and more questions. I've not put in any branching logic into this. I've not created any branches, nothing, not a single one. I've not created a single topic. What it's using is it's using the generated pre-trained transformers or the GPT in the background. I did not type this. Okay, how many burgers would you like? 2 burgers, 2 burgers, 1 plant and 1 beef. I would like lettuce and tomato and bacon. Thank you, Damien. Oh, thank you, Harrison, your ledge. And I'm not putting my delivery address in there because last time I did that, somebody legitimately delivered a tree to my house. I'm not kidding you. Somebody actually sent me a tree. So nope, I'm not putting my address on a public forum again. But actually what it's doing is it's using the GPT and it's allowing me to talk to it. And there we go. I apologize for the confusion. Okay, I broke it. So you can see it's not actually perfect, a bit like me. Okay, so those are 3 ways to generate Copilots. So what I've done is I've used a website, I've created on top of an internal SharePoint site, and what I've also done is I've used the custom prompt, and it's using the GPT in the background to generate the responses. So you can build a custom Copilot quickly. Now, a couple of things, right? Your data needs to be rock solid. So the reason my astrobiology bot worked is because my data is awesome. You know, I know this because it's built on actual lecture information, right? I'm going to skip that real quick. The one thing I wanted to move on real quickly is what you call agentification. So yeah, garbage in, garbage out. You can thank my friend Donna Sarker for the slide. So Donna is the AI extensibility lead at Microsoft. And what you'll notice is that actually when building out agentification, a Copilot doesn't keep context. It doesn't understand it. However, OpenAI have released a thing called the Assistance API, and it allows you to keep context within the Copilot. Oh my goodness, isn't that wild? So you can actually generate a Copilot referencing the Assistance API using an orchestrator, and then guess what? Using plugins and connectors, which you all know as low-code people, plus Power Automate to generate an agent. And what an agent will do is it'll work in the background as like an assistant to you. So if you think about a travel agent or a intern that's helping you from a legal firm, all of this stuff is possible using agentification in Copilot Studio. If you are going to learn anything in the next year, learn how to build these. Because I believe that organizations will be coming out with what you call industry-specific agents, industry-specific agents aligned to specific roles. So as I said, if you're a travel agent, awesome, you can build a travel agent Copilot that helps you on the side, right? For me, I would probably need an expense agent because I hate expense capture. If we could find a way to do that, folks, tell me easily, because I don't have an easy way to do it. But I will eventually build an expense agent, also a timesheet agent. But it's amazing because this is what the future looks like for you, is that anyone in the position of doing Power Platform, you are in the best spot to be able to deliver these agentified Copilots. Okay, so you should again ask your boss for a raise. When we start looking at the Assistance API, you can actually see that there's a lot of function in there, but there's a process that it runs through, right? So you'll have your personal finance bot, and it uses instructions, plus you define the model. Obviously, anything multi-model is good. And these kind of queries or questions will allow you to create these things called threads. Thanks, Tom. Good to see you, buddy. We'll be able to create these things called threads. And actually, because it keeps content, it allows you to review and move through the process, okay, which is quite cool. So it does keep context of what you're doing. and this is all public, right? You can actually see that a lot of organizations have started to embrace this. Okay, these are not all ANS customers or not ANS customers. This is off the Microsoft slide deck. So thank you, Microsoft. I pillaged your slides. No, I do not feel bad. But what's important is that a lot of people are going to are focusing on using these agents to drive interaction across their Copilot landscape. But I need to give you homework, right? Because this is really important. Thanks, Victor. Number one, I think you need to start thinking about how you can better interact with information around that would make your life easier. Really key. Number two, what type of tasks can you do every day that an assistant can help you with? Okay, so what are the manual things you can do? And that very simple search and find knowledge Copilot was really great. A food ordering Copilot that fulfills a really interesting scenario. I mean, it's not a normal thing that we'd use, but that Copilot that you saw on the facial palsy sites, amazing, right? It solved the problem there and then. And then my advice is just give it a go. So try and build your own Copilot. You likely can get a trial of Copilot Studio in your organization extremely fast, right? So I would highly recommend giving it a go. And actually, you know what? There's some pretty kick-ass training material. So Donna has built out the Copilot Learning Hub, and this is a great tool. There will be more on Copilot Studio on this very soon, but the Copilot Learning Hub is a great way for you to start engaging in Copilot without having to, read a million documents. And you can just watch these videos and start getting stuck in. And under the developer side, you will see that Copilot Studio and building your own Copilots will be available to you there. Okay. I've also stuck in the Microsoft resources. So extremely important. If you want to get stuck in, definitely give it a go. There is some really good stuff. So Dwayne, he's leading the Copilot Studio charge. He's got some really wicked videos on LinkedIn, which you should definitely check out. But I highly recommend you take a look at these resources. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you very much. I know there was an extreme amount of information really quickly, but thank you very, very much. Is Copilot Studio also dependent on Purview? Nope, it's not. It uses data loss prevention, right? Any educational licensing, it uses Power Platform connectors. So Power Platform connectors are not part of Purview just yet. Any educational licensing for freelancers? I have no idea. And then, yeah, Julie, such a pleasure. Julie, thank you for letting me use your website. And again, thank you, everyone. Like I said, I know it was a bit nuts. The next session is going to be more nuts. So we'll look at extending Copilot. We'll look at extending M365 Copilot using Copilot Studio. And maybe thank you for the compliments, everyone. You're very lovely. Compliments will get you everywhere. Just letting you know. Yeah. Wow, that's a lot of thanks. Geez, thank you, folks. If you want to talk more about this, just hit me up. I'm more than happy to talk. I've also had a lot of sugar. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Chris. Wow. Shan, legend.